Conference will now be recorded.
I am privileged to be able to explore all the aspects of history that I feel like exploring. I'm a little bit of a detective in that regard, and I'm honored to be able to explore the lives of the Lenape. It's hard when you go back hundreds or thousands or millions of years to try to figure out what was going on, but that's what I did, and it's. I had a conversation with a historian the other day, Rick Gefkin, who's a marvelous, marvelous writer. And he's got a new book out called Revolutionary Rivalry. And we talked about what is truth? What is truth? And I'm a little bit of a storyteller when it comes to the truth with regard to history, because you only have so much information. And the Lenape, especially, had no written language, so it was hard to record. They recorded everything very differently. They recorded it up here, and they recorded it in their wampum belts, which I'll talk about tonight. And I'm not going to bore you with too much of the boring stuff, I hope. Claire Garland, who is an ancestral related to the Lenape and with the Sandhill tribe here in New Jersey, has been a great benefit to me and inspiring me and helping me try to figure out how can I write something that's from the heart, but also as true as it can be and as real as it can be. So I wanted to, this is what I do. I have a company called Creative Vision Media. I never make money. Comcast has my television show weekly. It's been on for about 12 years. Not many people see it because I'm really bad at marketing. And I'm on YouTube, AKA all the social media, and I'm on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And I have Facebook groups all over the place. I don't have any in Mercer County, but used to say I might not at some point in time. But I have about 350,000 members of all the Facebook groups, and they're big fans. And I'm also on the Monmouth County America's 250 Anniversary Committee, and I've been on that for the last almost 3 years, working on a lot of projects, including a number of books. Some of the books I've written. So I would love to come back. It remains to be seen whether you'll like the show, as it were. But I can talk about a lot of different things. And that's what I love about being a writer and about being a historian. And my girlfriend is in the back. Say hi, Donna. This is Donna Speranza. We live together, not in sin, but in harmony. And our dog is wandering around a little bit too. So here's the headline for this. I changed this title from the Lenape from before the colonialists to the invasion of the Europeans, because they really did invade. It was incredible. And the headline for this whole story about the Lenape is this was the greatest population collapse in human history. I dare you to find one greater. All of the Lenape in the Americas within 150 years were almost wiped out. 90% of the population. Well, there's some good news, and I'll share that with you. So I tried to figure it out. I have a double major in geophysics and also journalism. And this is, I went to the blackboard. This is nonsense, but trying to figure out what happened and what kind of world did they live in, because there wasn't a lot of information to go through. I do know that there have been a lot of extinctions of great societies, of great cultures in Africa, in the Middle East, in the Near East, in Asia. You can see it all here. There's just lots, including the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, I mean, the Mongolian. There's been a lot of cultures that have collapsed. And I guess we're always curious about why, because we don't want to be another empire or whatever we are now, a culture that collapses. So, what caused? We're going to go right to the chase here. What caused all the deaths? Why did so many people die here, the Lenapes especially? And 80 to 90% of the deaths were old world diseases that the Europeans brought over. You see them: smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, bubonic plague, all the best sellers throughout history. In 1025, that was about 1,000 years ago, there were 50 to 60 million indigenous people that already lived in the Americas. 1025, that was 1,000 years ago. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go back to 10,000 or 1,025 and look at some things. So we went from 50 to 60 million. And in 1925, the population of indigenous people in this Americas was only about 250 to 330,000 people, way down from 50 to 60 million. And in 2025 now, the population has risen to 7.7 million. So that's the good news. We're not back where we were, but you know. And this is the estimated population by state. The top 10 states, California has the most indigenous people, a little over a million. California, Arizona, you see it. Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where most of these people migrated out of to go head west into Oklahoma and Canada and Wisconsin, etc. Pennsylvania has about 89,000, and New Jersey has about 61,000. These are the American Indian reservations today. There are 574 federally recognized tribes. To be a recognized tribe, you got to fill out the paperwork, you got to do the blood work and all that stuff. You got to figure it out. And then you can claim your heritage as an American indigenous people. But and it's going on all the time. I know tribes right now that are trying to find a way to get approved by the federal government because there are benefits. But the benefit of being an indigenous person who's gone through all of this, as I say in my book, The Long Walk of the Lenape, have been walking for a long time. So what happened to the Lenape? That's the big question. And you may not like the answer. And spoiler alert, it's Big Bang. Now, this is the part where I'm going to diverge a little bit, and I'm going to go quick because my mom, who passed away last year, she was very happy that I got a degree in geophysics and all that and the study of the Earth. And I interviewed one of the cosmologists, physicists that won the Nobel Prize for the theory of the Big Bang, Robert Wilson and Arno Penzias. They were on my program a couple of years ago. So we're going to go back 14 billion years ago. We'll be quick. And this story begins long before the Lenape existed, long before. The ice ages carved the land they lived on. The great migrations of early humans made their journey possible. The evolution of plants and animals created the ecosystem on which they depended. They were ecologists for sure. They knew how to manage the land. And Earth's long history really did set the stage for their homeland, their culture, and their survival. So I'm going to move through this very quick. Don't be frightened. Oh my God, it's a burning ball of fire. That's the Earth down here. You see the little ball at the bottom down there. And the sun is kind of formed about 4.5 billion years ago. And so then this is the evolution of the Earth. We're going to go through this quickly. 4.5 billion years ago, it was molten as all get out. And then it started cooling about 4.1. Then we entered some ice ages in 2.4. And then life began 2.1 billion years ago. And it's not going to be a test. So here's the key here. Life begins 2.1 billion years ago. The Lenape have been around for a long time. When I say Lenape, we're talking about Lenape in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York and Delaware. But I'm talking also about all indigenous people all over the world. Then from 2.1 billion years to about 800 million years, there was something called the boring billions. Billions of years were going by, and the Earth was oxygenating. It was called the Great Oxygenation. No kidding. And this is when life started to become developed. Life like these crazy looking things. They were not anything, complex until these guys came along, and they appeared about 1.8 to 1.6 billion years ago. And then the dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs, they were there, but meanwhile, this massive asteroid, all that, slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, creating the Chicxulub crater, which is still under there, and they can see it with radar scans and all that kind of stuff. I made up this little thing today. One dinosaur on the left it says here, 75% of all the species on the planet will be wiped out. And the guy's friend says, do you believe everything you read in the news? It's AI, George. Well, go figure. 75% of the species were wiped out when that comet came down. The dinosaurs, gone. Like fried dinosaur chicken. They were absolutely gone. And what was left were these small burrowing animals that were like birds and reptiles and like crocodiles and turtles and snakes and amphibians. And most of the fish didn't boil up in the ocean. They actually survived. And then something miraculous happened. Over the course of millions of years, these little creatures developed into this menagerie you see here on the screen. And one in particular, this giant ape-like creature, became the beginning of us in terms of what we were going to be. Now, this is getting toward the end of the beginning for this particular part of the presentation. The early human relatives weren't quite human. They were all kind. Remember Lucy from Australia and all that 3.2 million years ago? It's kind of hard for scientists to kind of figure out, are they more like humans if they use tools, if they can talk, if they can paint pictures? It's hard to know. But Charles Darwin, who wrote The Origin of the Species, very controversial in 1859, said it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. Now, this only has a little bit to do with evolution and a lot to do with the tenacity that the indigenous people had to do what they did to survive as long as they did without becoming totally wiped out like the Roman Empire and all those other things we looked at before. So here's just probably hard to read, but the first humans, the appearance of Homo sapiens, as we call them, was about 300,000 years ago. About 30,000 years ago, the Neanderthals disappeared. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The last glacial period we have, this was a big motivator for the Great Migration that we're going to talk about. The last glacial period that we had began about over 100,000 years ago. And you can see all that white stuff is snow and ice and thick and all that kind of stuff. And it was scaring everybody, especially the animals. And if the animals start going someplace else to get warm, you better follow them because they probably know what they're doing. They have the right instinct. Besides, if they leave, you have no food left. So this is what the Laurentide ice sheet looked like. You can see it didn't get quite down to Mercer County or Monmouth County. It got to about halfway through Staten Island, and you can see glacial moraines that give evidence of that. So why did all these people migrate to these new areas? Like I said, follow the animals, stay with the good weather, look for fresh water, seek some shelter, and avoid competition. Get away from all the competition, because if there's limited food and limited land, there's going to be more competition. So this is interesting now. See, there's a map here, and it says Russia's up there in the upper left, and Alaska, which is now the United States, is on the right. And this was Beringia, which is a land bridge that joined Russia or Asia and that whole continent of Asia to Alaska, which was North America. And so this became the perfect avenue. So all the orange that you see wasn't ice, it was grassland. And all the animals were slowly, over the course of millions of years, going over this land bridge and down in through Canada. And maybe they were taking pictures, I don't know. But eventually, the last glacial maximum, as they like to call it, was 20,000 years ago. In geologic time, that's a flash, that's nothing. That's just a small speck of space. So 15 to 20,000 years ago, a lot of scientists say ancestors of the Lenape, as well as all the other indigenous tribes that came in through the Apache, the Cherokee, everybody, reached North and South America 15 to 20,000 years ago. That's what you'll read in textbooks. However, news flash, here is some evidence that says maybe they were here longer. 4 human footprints were found in alkali sand at the White Sands National Park in New Mexico recently, The prints date from 23,000 to 2,100 years, long before humans were thought to have first entered North America 14 years ago, 14,000 years ago. So we need to adjust our thinking. They didn't get here 14,000. They were here like 23, 24,000 years ago. And the test confirmed that humans tramped around North America more than 20,000 years, not less than 14,000 years. And the footprints were preserved in mud. These are the guys looking right now. And they realized from the prints and all that a woman carrying a child, it was evidenced by deeper footprints on one side as she walked. And at one point, the child's pair of prints nearby, suggesting she had put the child down, because other evidence, you can see off in the distance, some mammoths and dire wolves. Dire wolves were wolves, but they were big, giant things roaming around the countryside. So she was frightened. We don't know if she died there or killed or what, but we have evidence that she was there with a child. So Beringia, there it is, Siberia, Alaska, ancient coastline, all that. That's where they came from. And the migration, are you listening? I hope so. Hey, Don, are you sleeping? No. The migration lasted for about 70,000 years. That's a long time. That's a long migration. That is a long walk. And that's why my book, Long Walk of the Lenape, it starts off with this long walk. And there was a little space. You can see there was a little place between on each side of where the red lines are coming down from Canada, where there wasn't a bunch of glacier stuff and they could get through. And they went to different places. They went to South America, they went to the south, they went to the west, they went all over. So here's an interesting statistic. This is a map from the 1600s. In the 1600s, in this country, the United States of America, we had about close to 100,000 Europeans living here. And I've done a lot of historical research and wrote some books about, the early explorers and what they did and all that kind of stuff. And this is a portrait in the 1600s showing all of the different tribes that existed in this particular area. And it was a swarming menagerie of people and bumping it, and they all got along pretty well. Europeans, when they came, which is another story, they kind of screwed things up. All right, now let's see. Let's go now to the year 1025, because 1025, I think, was the heyday for the Lenape. Now, it could have been, it could have been 1005, could have been 1050. I just figured 1025 gives it a nice poetic justice in terms of it's 1,000 years ago. And instead of us celebrating the 250th anniversary of the country, we're celebrating what the Lenape were doing 1,000 years ago. And that's what we're going to look at right now. So the world in general was a patchwork of all kinds of rising kingdoms. The Byzantine Empire was still a giant. The Holy Roman Empire was growing. England was Anglo-Saxon with a Viking king. The Middle East, the golden age of learning. Islam was the intellectual engine of the planet. So the world 1,000 years ago was a planet full of kingdoms, rising empires, immense forests, and enormous indigenous nations not yet dominated by Europe. So this is where we're going to focus, because it was in this time 1,000 years ago, up until the explorers started coming about 1,500, 1,600, they had a bunch of good years during this period. So it was a world of powerful empires, sophisticated cities, scientific advancement, complex governments, and extraordinary indigenous cultures, long before European colonism reshaped global history. Indigenous people were doing quite well on their own. They didn't need the Europeans to help them or show them how to, carve a pelt off a beaver. I got to make sure this thing works now. Okay, where is it? Oh, here it is. Good. So there was no thank you. There was no global colonization or national borders. There were plenty of massive forests, thriving indigenous megacultures. Asia was the world's center. And China, by the way, very advanced. This is China. one of the most advanced empires of the day. It was the Song dynasty that was in charge of everything there. And that's just the sidelight. I think they probably found their place in society and they're going to behave from now on. They don't come back to haunt us. Indigenous people in 1025 in Asia, there were 150 million at least. Africa, 60 to 80. The Americas, 40 to 60 million. And Australia and the Pacific, 1 to 3 million. Flourishing indigenous civilizations in the Americans. You can see it. The Mississippian civilization of the Cahokia had a city of 15 to 25,000 people. We're going to look at that city in a minute. It was a big city. The ancestral Puebloans were building astronomical structures. In the Northeast, the Iroquois and Lenape cultures were strong and developing. The Great Lakes and Plains were home to many thriving nations. The Maya were in the post-classic period. Blah, blah, blah. These guys and women and children were doing great. So I'm just going to show you this real quick. The 20 major nations of North America in the year 1000 were these. The Lenape, Delaware, were in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Delaware. Okay, and I'll go to the next one. This is Smore, Tumakua in Florida, Calusa in Southwest Florida. You can see them, Cherokee ancestors, the Appalachia. There were a lot of tribes. I show you that first map from 1600. So many tribes. Now, these were the largest cities in the world in 1025. The reason I'm showing you this stuff, I want you to start thinking about the Lenape a little differently. They were magnificent people in many, many ways. And well, I'll try to explain why they didn't quite make it, but they're still trying and they're making a comeback. So look, biggest cities in the world in 1025 may surprise you. Cordoba, Spain, Baghdad, Constantinople, Cairo, Kyoto, Japan, Aleppo, Syria, Guyana, and then Cahokia in America. We're going to look at Cahokia right now. Cahokia had at least 25,000 people living in it. Cahokia, you ever heard of it? I never had. Cahokia is in Collinsville, Illinois. Go figure. It was bigger at the time, remember, at 1025, let's say, bigger than London. There were over 120 earthen mounds, the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas. Neighborhoods they had, plazas, wood henges, political, religious centers. It was, now get this, it was the New York City of ancient North America. You want to see it? You want to go there? Okay, let's do it. Cahokia, this is just an artist's conception, but they've crawled, the archaeologists have crawled all over this place. Cahokia had no written language. Now, written language is an important factor to consider when you're becoming a civilization. You can't become an incredible civilization without a written language. They didn't have any laws in Cahokia, and they had complex religious and political rules all passed down orally through chiefs, priests, and councils, but no written language. It wasn't until the Europeans came and helped them transcribe what they were uttering into some kind of recognizable language that could be put into a dictionary. Talk about that in a little while. This is what we think Cahokia looks like. You see the big house on them. There was a pyramid. We had pyramids. They had a bunch of those different pyramids. It's still there today. Cahokia was the only actual city north of Mexico, and there were similar cities like Cahokia in Georgia. In the east, there were powerful regional centers like Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma, and villages in the northeast never really grew large because they were moved every 15 or 20 years to rest the soil. The Lenape were very good at land management, and they knew how to manage crops, and they would store seeds, and they would move every 15 to 20 years. so they could rest the soil and move on and start planting things again. They were excellent gardeners. So here's a look today, what Cahokia looks like in Collinsville, Illinois. I want to go. Let's take a bus. And here's Cahokia in about 1050 to 1200 AD, about 1,000 years ago. It was massive. It was so fantastic. Now, during the time of Cahokia, North America had roughly 7 to 10 million indigenous people. Okay, and you can see them all here. Great Plains, the Pacific Northwest, the Southwest, a lot of indigenous people. So now we're going to talk about the land of the Lenape, because the Lenape, and I'm so glad, I know we have some people on this in this presentation that are listening and watching, who are writing down, taking notes, and will call me immediately afterward and say, wait a minute, I didn't get that quite right. And so with respect, I say, okay, I want to hear it. I want to know, because I think this story is a story that's worth telling. And I tell it with respect and humility, because I wasn't there. And even the people who have heard this passed down through oral tradition. I've been to powwows. Donna and I went to a powwow in Brooklyn. We went to a powwow someplace else. We went to Princeton a couple of weeks ago to go to a powwow there that looked at the language and different things. It was fantastic. So in New York, there were 40 to 80,000 people. Now we're going to get local here. There were about 40 to 80,000 Iroquois and Algonquin nations. New Jersey, about 20 to 40,000 Lenape. They were Munsee, Unami, Unalaktigo. There was Turtle, the Wolf, and Turkey. And in Pennsylvania, there were 25,000 to 45,000 Lenape, Susquehannock, and Shawnee. And Delaware, about 8 to 12. They were all Lenape in Delaware. The largest indigenous village in New Jersey, and it wasn't anything like that massive thing in Collinsville, Illinois, was Minnesink. And it was along the Delaware River in Sussex County, close to where the Mercer County and, of course, Monmouth County. It was the primary Lenape center of population, trade, and culture. There were more than 1,500 people living in the region, which isn't a lot, but, excuse me, it was enough. The Lenape lived in New Jersey for 10,000 to 25,000 years, longer than the Roman Empire. Excuse me. Let me take a drink. Cheers, folks. Longer than the Egyptian dynasties, and longer than all the European kings combined. They weren't one tribe, the Lenape, that's clear. They were a nation of nations. Raritan, they were in Keyport, Matawan, Hazlitt, Union Beach, the Navesink, Hackensack, Tappan, Ramapo, Munsee, Unami, Unalatigo. They were all different, not one tribe, but they were a nation of nations. Life for the Lenape was a question of balance. That's what I love about it. Everything was with respect and memory and devotion to nature and to the past and to the memory. They had no writing. There were no texts. There were no history books. They couldn't give it. They would pass down their oral tradition to the children around the campfire. They had fields of corn, beans, and squash. These were called the Three Sisters. They grew them religiously. Corn, beans, and squash. These were plants that supported each other. They had fishing weirs, like traps in all the rivers. They loved to fish. They loved fish. They had footpaths leading to train stations. They had footpaths leading to trade networks, and they were very friendly with each other. They'd go and they'd say, "Hey, we got things we made, and we want to trade that for this, and clothing and necklaces and all that." They had massive oyster middens. And these aren't mittens you put on your hands when you're cold. We're going to talk about those in a minute. They had fishing canoes made of tulip poplar. Women were tending the gardens. Men were preparing for the seasonal hunts. Children were gathering berries. Elders storytelling by the evening fires. I mean, it was almost perfect. I wish I could have been there. This was Lenape. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's basically all of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, southeast New York, Delaware, and coastal Connecticut. This was their territory. This, if they were going to draw a map, they would say, if somebody said, "Where are you from?" They'd say, "We're from Lenape. Again, I apologize if I didn't pronounce it correctly. So the impact of the Europeans on the Lenape, um, I don't want to go there, but I will tell you this, that there were 20 to 30,000 Lenape, which simply, it doesn't have to be Lenape. The Lenape descendants I've talked to say it's redundant. It just means common man, normal person. Were located in New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, about 20 to 30,000 in the 1500s. By the 1700s, the total population of these 20 to 30 Lenape, 30,000, declined like 75 to 90%. Remember I put that up at the beginning of the program, that they had died from the old world diseases. I just want to give you a sense of what all the tribes or different areas look like in New York and New Jersey. You can see it for yourself. Erie, Seneca, Cayuga, Delaware in New York, and on the right, New Jersey. They were well organized, very well organized, and not a piece of paper to write on. This is John White, an artist from the 1500s who came to America and did some color, pen and ink kind of things of Lenape life. These were some things he created, and we now have to get his impression. And again, this is an artist's impression. A lot of people have called him tall, handsome, beautiful, graceful, all that stuff. And there's what their villages look like. The teepees were really rounded. Long houses were for multiple families and that sort of thing. And they love fish. They would do salmon, I guess. And that's the village. And the village was very important. But there weren't a lot of big cities. There were little villages with maybe 20 to 100 people. And so you had villages like neighborhoods. You had neighborhoods. And you'd say, I'm going over to that other neighborhood to trade, see if I can't get some poplar things. So there were about 30 to 40 moderately sized villages in New Jersey in about 1500. And about 200 to 300 people lived in each one. I misspoke before. About 200 to 300 people lived in each one of the 30 to 40 moderately sized villages. And it was a highly, highly organized society. Governance was non-authoritarian. Let's get political. It was consensus based. People wanted consensus. It was council driven. You made decisions through the council. And here's the one I love most of all. Donna, you ready for this? Ready. It was matriarchal.
I like the women.
It was matriarchal. The clans always descended through the mother. I mean, not physically, but also philosophically. Chiefs were not rulers or kings. They were servants. And the Lenape had a particular moniker that you probably have heard of before. They were called the grandfathers, not because they were old and had stodgy ways of viewing life, but they were peacekeepers. They would help tribes resolve their differences. They were facilitators. It sounds like the kind of society I might want to live in. So life was in balance. We talked about it. Long houses, bark-covered wigwams, fields of corn, beans, and squash, fishing weirs, children gathering berries. It was a great life. This is what one of the wigwams would look like. Not a teepee. It's not a teepee. Teepees are out west, different kind of thing. And every 20, 25 years, whatever, they tear it all down and bring it along with them and build something new. But this was a typical kind of a teepee, a wigwam rather. And you can see there was a fire in the center, and they put rocks, and it's kind of a cutaway view. I asked somebody I have a Facebook group called Remember the Lenape, and I asked them, do you have any plans for a wigwam? I want to build one in my backyard. So I might do that. Might be my next summer project. This was a longhouse. A longhouse was pretty large, and it was for multiple families or people who just wanted to be really good friends. And you can see that's kind of what it's all about. And a lot of people were living together in that particular thing. And here are some of the activities. You can see the picture on the right. They like being at the bend in the river because that's where they can put their weir. See the weir? It's a big weir. And it's where fish get trapped and they go into the trap and they can't get out. And they just go in and stab the fish and eat them. And then this lady off on the left here, she's actually taking seeds from the plants, whether it's from the beans, the corn, the squash, and she's putting those seeds in jars and burying them in the ground. So over the winter time, they'll stay in the ground, or if they move away and then they come back years later, they'll know where the seeds are. And then up here, this is fire management. They would burn a field just like we do today. I forget what the term is, but they would burn the field as a land management technique. And if the field got too crazy and too tired, they'd move on to another field. Now, the role of women, I'm telling you something, these women were tough. They were tough. And they were also compassionate. But if somebody got a divorce, and it happened, not too often, the woman would walk away with everything. She'd get everything. There was no question. She was the one who would help decide who the leaders would be. Not, she didn't pick her husband or her friend or her friend's friend. She would help decide who they had to be. The matriarchal clan system seemed to be cool. So don't forget the clans are the Turtle Clan, they're the peacekeepers, wisdom keepers, but they all did it. The Wolf Clan, they're considered the protectors, the warriors, and the Turkey Clan, they're providers and caretakers. Your clan, whatever clan you were in, came from your mother. And property and land rights were passed through women, not men. And clan mothers had enormous, ladies, authority, just like Donna. She has enormous authority. Marriages had to be between different clans. Do you know why? So there wasn't any interbreeding, inner blood kind of crazy stuff going on. They had it down. And the clan mothers were really considered the stabilizers of Lenape society. I've talked to Claire Garland, who is I think she's a clan mother, and she's very stable. This is the Sachem. Rock'em Sock'em. The Sachem wasn't a chief. He was a wise guy, a wise man, I should say. He was a servant of the people. He wasn't the chief. He wasn't the leader. He was the spiritual advisor. He was very, very duty bound to help his fellow Lenape. And then the men, mostly, I think mostly, I wasn't there, like to go hunting. And they'd go hunting and fishing and canoeing and teach their kids how to do that. And they had bows and arrows until the Europeans came and gave them guns and knives. And oh, Lord have mercy. Now, a lot of people have said to me, John, how do you know all this? No, have said to me, didn't the Lenape have slaves too? Well, slavery was running rampant throughout the world in 1025. Everybody had slaves. Slaves had slaves. But there was no Lenape slavery. There was no Lenape slavery per se. If the Lenape captured someone from another tribe during a conflict, they had three choices: release them, adopt them, or execute them. And they rarely did executions. And they would sometimes adopt them. And that person would say, okay, now I'm with you. I'm with this tribe. Spirits were also very important. The spiritual world for the Lenape until the Europeans came and promised them all kinds of things with Christianity. They were all into the spirits. Spirits were in everything. Spirits were in a rock. They were in a soda can. Well, they didn't have soda cans. But Kishalamankum was the one who creates with his thought. This was the major dude or the major person. This person could just think and create something. And so I'm not sure it was a worship, it was a respect, I think, more than anything else. They believed everything had a spirit, that there should be harmony between humans and nature, that dreams carry messages, and the creator made the world through power and song, and that people have three souls: spirit, living, and death. Interesting. The Matatuik were little tiny sprites and spirits that did all kinds of things. One did weather, one did this, one did that. And I don't know, they may have had hundreds, I'm not sure. I haven't driven down this road too much in my research. But everything in life has a spirit. So when a Lenape cuts down a tree to build a canoe, he thanks the tree. He blesses the tree and thanks the tree. When a Lenape man kills a deer, he blesses the deer and thanks the deer and releases the spirit within that deer to go its way. It's a very cool world. So water is also a very important part, and reflecting on life and all that. And again, this is all passed down in oral stories. There are no books. There are books, but they're written by people way long after these people were doing this kind of thing. So this, I thought, you can't see this very well, but this was the controlled burn. It created meadows for deer, managed the finches, all that stuff. They knew they had land management down pat, planning for the future. Now the Lenape, especially here in New Jersey and Delaware and New York, loved oysters and clams. And the Lenape Midden was nothing more, and I shouldn't say nothing more, it was very important. It was a place where they put all their refuge, like clams and shells and bones and sticks and you name it, and it would accumulate over the centuries. So some of these midden got huge, huge. I'll show you some in a minute. But they were also used when the colonials got here to help them with make fertilizer. They would brick over them with different things. And a lot of the middens should be historical in nature, I would think, have been destroyed. There's another evidence of a midden. Here's a midden on the southern shore of Staten Island. I've seen them as I go out of my boat. A midden, a Glidden midden. This is the Glidden midden in Maine, which is all of that. That whole white, that's all shells. Well, for the most part, the bones and stuff like that. Red Bank, New Jersey has a bunch of middens of things. But again, it's hard to see them anymore. This is the whaleback shell midden, one of the biggest middens in the country, I think, in Maine. And this is an old photograph. This thing is huge. I think this is the whaleback midden. Now, this is a slide to remind me that um, the greatest societies and cultures and civilizations all had a form of some kind of writing so that they could record. Lenape did not. And writing does speed up civilization. Uh, and it's good and it's bad, but if you want to speed up your civilization, you don't want to be trapped in a steady state of communing with nature. It helps knowledge accumulate. It allows people to keep records. It spreads knowledge horizontally across different places. It preserves laws. It stabilizes governments, and it enables long distance diplomacy. Part of the problem was, well, we'll get to that. An oral system can be just as powerful as a written one, but it requires extraordinary memory structures, like a good brain, wampum, ceremonial storytelling, lineage roles, sacred repetition, and elder councils. The Lenape, Iroquois, the Maya, the Inca, and many others did a lot of really cool things. They invented things. They were instrumental in developing astronomy. Not just the Lenape, but all of these, taken collective, philosophically, political systems, agricultural innovations, complex trade networks, and long historic memory. Two Moravian missionaries in the mid 1700s came over and lived with the Lenape, and they started, like I said, they created a dictionary and translated some texts. And there are many people today who are descendants who are actually teaching this language in school, and people who are of the heritage are learning it, which is very cool. And this is where we got in trouble. I promised I didn't want to go here, but a lot of the agreements that we had with Lenape were on paper, and they didn't understand that we were paying them to own the property. They thought we were paying them for the use of the property, that nobody owned it. It was just a big disagreement. So as land was sold and fences got put up, they ran into things like this: no trespassing. And wait a minute, what? This is our land. So wampum is not money. You see wampum in the movies as it's money. It's an aid. It's a beads, uh, purplish and white beads, woven into a special diagram on a belt with leather, and it records memory and agreement. So if you have an agreement with somebody, you can create a wampum agreement. And I don't completely understand it. I want to try to understand, how do you decode wampum? But here's some actual shells that were used, and the wampum thing there, the little figures holding hand, that might have been a peace treaty between two tribes or something like that. It was a living language. It wasn't just beads, but a system of memory, law, and diplomacy. Color had meaning too. White symbolized peace, clarity, truth, and purple represented history and struggle and all that. And the patterns acted as sentences. But that's why I say it'd be really interesting to try to decode some of these things. Belts were spoken records. It was never money. It was a sacred archival system, a cultural ledger, a testament to identity, unity, and responsibility. So paper versus wampum, we thought as Europeans that paper was the way to go, and the Lenape had no clue what we were trying to do. So the other thing I want to talk about just briefly, and we're coming to the end here, is that the Lenape also loved to trade. And when we came over and we wanted to trade with them, they loved beaver pelts, and they were trading beaver pelts among themselves. But they were always trading from one village to the next. They had a trade network. A lot of these paths that you see, the Minisink and all the other paths, they would trade wampum, fur, stone tool shells, herbs, mats, pottery, you name it. So what I want to do real quick is I want to show you one final thing that is, I think I can do it. And it is well, maybe I'm not. Oh yeah. So I think I'm going to show you in the next half hour, after some Q&A, I want to show you a video that I did. It's about 8 minutes long, about the Lenape in Mercer County. And you're probably saying now, why did you show us that in the beginning? Because I want you to stay. I'm be happy to take questions, and any and all questions. I'm not an expert necessarily, although I pretend to be one.
Okay, John, I have questions for you from our viewers. The first, what is the significance of earthen mounds? You mentioned earthen mounds and you showed it in a photo, I think, in Collinsville.
Yep.
Okay. What is the significance?
Most in Collinsville, well, this would be the difference between an earthen mound that is a midden, M-I-D-D-E-N, which is a collection. It's like a trash heap, but it's everything. The archaeologists love to go into trash heaps, whether you're colonial or it's Ben Franklin's bathroom that he, whatever. The Lenape mounds that were the pyramids. Pyramids were religious, spiritual structures. And just like anything else, the Egyptians thought you'd get closer to the gods if you went up to the pyramid at the top. Your soul could be released from the gods. So a lot of the spirituality that comes with the Lenape religion, I don't think it's been completely written about. And it's difficult to translate sometimes the meaning that they had, but the mounds were always, and some mounds were burial mounds. Because let's not forget that when the Europeans came, the Lenape were dealing with burials and ceremonial mounds to bury their loved ones almost every day.
Okay, next question. Are there any Lenape at Princeton?
Oh, you mean living there today?
Well, it looks like a two-part question. So were Lenape living in Princeton? And
Yes.
yes.
And by the way, I just attended a 1 day, all-day seminar with a whole bunch of Lenape ancestors. There must have been 100 of them, and we talked all day long about language, and it kind of like a powwow, but it was really an opportunity for people to get together and carry on the oral traditions. What do you remember? And what do we need to do as a people? And how can we get people to remember us? How do we get our children to embrace the culture that we're trying to remember? So yes, no, the video that I'm going to show you will talk about Princeton. So don't go anywhere because this is the world premiere coming up after the questions. Then I have questions after that if you like.
So I guess this would be part B of the same question. Do you know if the Lenape are represented in the new Princeton Museum?
I do not.
Okay.
And somebody, I'm going to make an appeal. If there's any historians out there or Lenape that would take a drive with me through Mercer County 1 day or 1 weekend or more than that to do some research together, I'll come back with the answer.
Okay. Next question. Did the Lenape drink coffee back in the day?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. That's a good. I'm gonna find out. That's the great thing about being an historian. The first thing you have to admit you don't know everything, and secondly, if you want to find out, then you become the detective, and that's fun.
Okay. Do you have a favorite movie that portrays the Lenape?
I would love to get a hold of Ken Burns. He's a big fan of mine. I've done a lot of videos about them. I don't know if it would be a movie that's historical fiction or a documentary. I'm tired of a lot of the movies that portray all the indigenous people as savages. They had compassion. They had heart. They got screwed a little bit with not completely understanding what our intentions were, what our motives were, and they got pushed away. And the fact that they're coming back now is good. But I don't know, Donna, do you have a favorite movie of Native Americans? Or I don't know. I like Colors of the Wind, the Disney movie about Pocahontas. But no, I'd like to make one. It'd be great.
What are the best ways to support land back efforts for the Lenape people?
You mean getting their land back, reclamation?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I hate political questions because it makes me think politically. I would find there's so many efforts underway in so many different locations representing so many different tribes. And maybe there is a United Nations of Indigenous Peoples that has the wherewithal to go to Washington. And I have some pictures that I almost put in the slideshow today of Nixon, remember him, meeting with some of the indigenous tribes and honoring them. And I think it was very cool. And I think trying to find out who can do that. And if you're interested, contact me somehow, and I'll see if I can't find out for you who does it. I haven't. I think I actually sent a note to Cory Booker a couple of months ago, and I just got a note back about trying to find a way to honor the Lenape in New Jersey, and it was kind of a form answer, so I didn't take it all that seriously.
Do you know of any famous Lenape politicians?
Hmm. I know actors and stuff that claim, a lot of people, it's unfortunate, but there are a lot of people who claim to be ancestral people from indigenous ones. And, it's not an easy thing to prove necessarily, or maybe it is. I've never had to do it. I've always just checked, yes, male, Caucasian. And even then, I'm not so sure I want to start answering those questions. I don't know.
Okay. Do you know how to say love in the Lenape language?
Uh, I know German. I know French.
Mhm.
I don't
Okay.
know, and maybe I can find out before we go.
Okay.
What is it?
A Holton.
A Hulkin.
A Holton.
What is it?
A Holton.
A Hulkin. I don't know. Donna's saying something. I don't know.
A-H-O.
Wait a minute. Wait. How you spell it?
A-H.
A-H.
O-A.
O-A.
L-T.
L-T.
I-N.
A-H-O-A-L-T-I-N. It's interesting. What I've learned about the language is because there was no writing, that the people who came over here they'd heard things kind of like in immigration in New York Harbor. They'd hear somebody's name, Smith, and they say, oh, that's Smith, and it really wasn't. They'd spell it the way they wanted to spell it. And a lot of the words I've heard that were translated didn't really. It was just they'd say the Lenape would say, okay, fine, you want to do that, then say it that way. A Houghton. We'll figure that one out.
Okay. Is there a record of music and dance traditions and ceremonial activity?
A record? Only from what we see. Like when Don and I went to the powwow in Brooklyn, took us hours to get there, and we danced. I can show you if you go to my homepage on Facebook, John R. Schneider. We danced. Everybody got to dance. We danced around in a circle. We did all kinds of crazy. It was wonderful. But I don't know. There's no like Arthur Murray dance steps. It's mostly drum beat and please.
Okay.
Oh,
This is interesting. If you were to meet a Lenape person, what question would you ask that person?
do you have a couple of months to sit down and talk about it? I love learning about different cultures, and I try. One of the things I love about being a historian is being able to sit down with people and talk to them. Um, in fact, in my studio, where is where Donna's sitting, I've spoken to hundreds of people, interviewed lots and lots of from government officials to authors and actors and all that stuff. And it's one of the things I enjoy most about life is learning about others, even if it's you, a librarian, like why? And, my grandfather used to say that the most important thing in a person's life, and he became a millionaire back in the days when a millionaire was meaningful. He said, the library is the most important thing in a person's life because it's where you can find all knowledge. And, when I saw some of the libraries in Iran that were devastated and destroyed during the war, people were just, it was awful. And all of that knowledge, and that's what makes me sad about the Lenape is that even oral traditions for our families, I've got boxes and boxes of pictures with the scalloped edges, black and white, for my family. And I used to love to go through them as a kid. My daughter's not interested in that. I've got a phone full of pictures. I'm not even sure I'll transfer them or print them. I used to have photographs and stuff. The Lenape had their memory and their wampum. And now they get together to celebrate their lives in powwows and workshops and seminars and stuff like that. But it it's sad, but it's also so joyful to be able to celebrate heritage. I mean, I'm part Danish and English and French, but who cares?
One of our viewers mentioned that there's a Nanticoke Lenape Museum in Bridgeton. Are you familiar with that?
I am not. There is one that I want to go to in New York. Is that the one? Where Bridgeton, not New York, right? Or no?
I'm assuming New Jersey.
Yeah, I was assuming
but
too, but there is a huge Lenape, and I've talked to a lady up there, and I've said, and Don and I are going to go up there maybe when the weather gets better, but they've got a nice lodge up there, and it's supposed to be all about the Lenape and the Native Americans who lived in this area. I'd love to see it. We did go down to Philadelphia to see the American Revolution Museum, and they had some Lenape stuff there as well, which was.
Mhm.
But I think there should be more. And I know that some of the historical societies in different towns, maybe Princeton, I know probably has something. Matawan Historical Society, I do a lot of work with, has some collections. Atlantic Highlands has some collections. There are artifacts everywhere. This state was, now I don't want to say overrun, but there were a lot of Lenape running around, you know, and while a lot of the stuff that they left here is probably buried under, houses and farms and I have a friend of mine who said his name is Ralph and he's an archaeologist and he goes out. He's been going out since he was 13 years old. He's like in his 80s now, and he has found thousands of things that are relics from the Lenape, and he gives them to museums.
Are there any percussion instruments among the artifacts?
Well, I don't know. I know he might have some.
Okay.
I'm going to try to do something here. Hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I was distracted. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Do you know if the Lenape celebrated Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I don't. I'm not even sure we're celebrating Thanksgiving. but they did celebrate, and they had a lot of ceremonies all the time around the fire. Now, Don and I have a ceremony around the television set. As Marshall McLuhan said once, that the television is the cool fire for our society. That's back in the day, you'd sit around a campfire, you listen to the radio. Now we all sit, heck, sometimes we eat dinner watching TV.
There are other suggestions as to where people can find information about Lenape's different museums in the state, which I will include in the information that is later sent out to viewers.
Well, my book, which is it backwards on the screen? My book, Long Walk of the Lenape, and it's all printed backwards, so people with that affliction. No, I'm kidding.
It's not. No, we can read it.
Oh, good. There's some resources in the back showing you where you can learn more about the Lenape. And I just wanted to say, you can also go to this JohnSchneiderTalks.com. I can talk about anything. And I don't like making up stuff, but I can talk about the Lenape Revolutionary War, effective relationships, right? Don and I wrote a book called Putting, and being a caretaker. I was a caretaker for 7 years for my mom. And Mercer County, I want to go to because I want to see what you got. And it's one of the densest clusters, as you can read, of archaeological and cultural heritage in New Jersey. You've got more than 3,000 documented indigenous archaeological sites. And I'd like to show you where some of them are right now. We can come back to questions. Is that all right?
Yes, that's great.
Here we go.
The Lenape of Mercer County, homeland at the crossroads of time. Today it is the political heart of New Jersey, but long before Trenton, long before the Revolution, long before a single European foot crossed the river, this land was already ancient and deeply lived in. Here in Mercer County lies one of the densest clusters of Lenape heritage in the entire state, with more than 3,000 documented indigenous archaeological sites spread across its forests, wetlands, and river valleys. Every bend in a stream, every rise in the land, every marsh edge still carries the memory of the people who called this place home for thousands upon thousands of years. The Abbott marshlands are the heart of ancient Mercer south of Trenton. The land opens into one of the most extraordinary prehistoric landscapes on the East Coast. The Abbott marshlands, more than 3,000 acres of wetlands, creeks, and wooded uplands. This is not just a marsh, it is a time capsule. Archaeology proves that people have been living, hunting, fishing, and gathering here for more than 13,000 years. From the end of the Ice Age all the way to the Lenape communities who greeted the first Europeans. Burial sites, shell middens, ancient trails. Here the Lenape lived in rhythm with the tidewaters of the Delaware, a world of cattails, muskrats, river eels, and migratory birds that returned season after season, generation after generation. Trenton is the location of a crossroads of water and life. Modern Trenton sits atop one of the most archaeologically rich areas in central New Jersey. The Assunpink Creek Valley, today winding through the city, was once a central Lenape travel corridor and seasonal fishing ground. In the Delaware River stood a prehistoric village, a place of hearths, pottery, stone tools, and daily life. Every modern street corner overlays thousands of years of human footsteps. Ewing lies along the ancient river. Ewing Township, stretching along the Delaware, contains significant pre-contact settlement sites. Scudder Falls, now known for its modern bridge, was once a vibrant Lenape fishing area and riverside encampment. Projectile points and scrapers found throughout the township confirm long-term habitual presence, families returning year after year to the same trusted resources. Hamilton is where you can find the Abbott Farm National Historic Landmark. Within Hamilton Township lies a treasure of American archaeology, the Abbott Farm National Historic Landmark, part of the larger Abbott Marshland. This region is so rich in indigenous history that archaeologists consider it one of the most important prehistoric landscapes in the Northeast. Occupation here spanned the Archaic, Woodland, and Contact periods, a remarkable continuity stretching from the Ice Age hunters to the Lenape communities of the 1600s. In Lawrence, explore along the Assunpink Trail. Lawrence Township sits astride the historic Assunpink Trail, a major Lenape footpath. Sites near Rider University and Colonial Lake reveal the presence of Middle and Late Woodland cultures, communities thriving centuries before the first European arrival. Hopewell and Hopewell Borough are between the Delaware and the Sourlands. In Hopewell, the landscape holds the memory of seasonal hunting camps, argillite and jasper quarrying small agricultural settlements. The foothills of the Sourland Mountains were dotted with encampments, while the Delaware River shoreline features significant woodland period habitation sites. The area's network of Lenape footpaths tied the Delaware Valley to the uplands in a web of travel, trade, and seasonal movement. Pottery, projectile points, stone tool, cooking pits, all speak to a long, continual presence. Pennington Borough is a historic stop on the East-West Trail. Pennington was part of a major East-West Lenape migration and travel corridor. Small habitation spots and foraging areas show families moving through the region, gathering what the seasons offered. And Princeton is a place along the Stony Brook Valley, which was a vital Lenape settlement corridor. Archaeological digs near the Princeton battlefield as well as on university lands reveal continuous indigenous use from the Archaic to the Contact period. Early Quaker settlers of the 1600s recorded encounters with Lenape families still living along the brook, proof that this valley remained a homeland even into colonial times. East Windsor, West Windsor, and Hightstown. The Old Trail, the Old Brooks. The historic Old York Road cutting through these townships was originally a Lenape trail. Here, campsites dotted Bear Brook, Rocky Brook, Grover's Mill, Dutch Neck, the Millstone River agricultural plots, seasonal hunting sites, and scattered artifacts reveal heavy Lenape use of the area's waterways and wetlands. This region formed part of a critical Unami-Lenape corridor, linking the Raritan Basin to the Delaware Valley. Robbinsville. The Crosswicks watershed. Robbinsville sits within the Crosswicks Creek watershed, rich in fish, game, and wetland resources. The Bear Swamp region shows strong evidence of sustained indigenous presence. Trails through Robbinsville connected villages in Allentown and the Assunpink region, weaving this township into the wider Lenape landscape of travel and trade. Hightstown. Between two rivers, Hightstown sits along an ancient Lenape travel route bridging the Delaware and Raritan drainages. Near Rocky Brook, archaeologists identified Woodland period camps, seasonal foraging areas, scatterings of pottery, stone flakes, and tool fragments. It was a crossroads of movement between two of New Jersey's great watersheds. In every township, every creek valley, every stretch of forest or marsh, the land of Mercer County tells the same quiet story. The Lenape were here, long before us, long enough to call this place home in a way that echoes across millennia. Their trails became our roads, their villages became our towns, their rivers became our boundaries, and their deep relationship with this land still shapes Mercer County today, whispering through its waters, lingering in its soil, and living on in the stories we continue to tell.
In the beginning, before borders, before maps, there was only the land and its people. They were the Lenape, the original people, guardians of rivers, keepers of memory, voices of peace. For thousands of years, they walked their world in balance. But then everything changed. From across the ocean came sails like wings. With them came strange goods, new weapons, and invisible death. Friendship turned to betrayal. Promises written on paper cut deeper than any sword. A single false walk stole 1,000,000 acres in a day. Yet through every trial, the Lenape endured. When revolution came, their leaders faced impossible choices. White Eyes dreamed of peace. Kilbuck tried to hold a fragile alliance. Captain Pipe demanded justice. They fought in forests. They bled in massacres. They marched through exile. From the Delaware to the Ohio, from Indiana to Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Ontario, every step became part of one journey, the long walk. But this was never a walk into silence. It was a walk into survival, into memory, into today. Because the Lenape did not disappear. Their voices still rise, their drums still thunder, their stories still burn. The long walk of the Lenape, from history's storyteller, John Schneider. Not just a history, a legacy, a promise. The long walk never ended, and the Lenape are still here.
Sorry, John, I had muted you there, so I'm going to send you an unmute one more time there.
Very good. All right. Hey, Mary.
Hey, John.
So you sound like you got a nice county and a great library and a good program lined up with lots and lots of great topics.
Yeah, we have variety. I mean, that's what we aim for, to please our viewers.
Me too. Anything else? Any other questions or anything I can help you with in terms
No,
of?
other questions and comments had to do with tips on how to see more information about the Lenape. So I will include that in information we send out to our viewers afterward.
Could I add one tip?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. On Facebook, and I know not everybody's a big fan of Facebook, excuse me, but I have a Facebook group called Remember the Lenape. And I've only had it up probably for less than 6 months or something like that. We've got 500 or 600 people already. A lot of my Facebook groups, I have hundreds. I have 350,000 members of all the groups. But the Lenape one is special to me. I also have America's 250 celebration, which is another place I do a lot of speaking and writing about the Revolutionary War. But I'm glad that you're interested in the Lenape. And again, I know that some people are on this program watching, and I am humbled by being able to tell the story and realize that not everything I say may be exactly the way somebody thinks that it happened. I'm not exactly sure about everything that I've written, except that I've checked it a bunch of times. And history's kind of funny that way. When you go back 20 or 30,000 years, it's like the telephone game. Not everybody remembers because not everybody was there. In fact, nobody was there. And without writing and without the tools to produce, there's not even cave drawings. There's jewelry, and there's what the colonials said about them. And I think that was kind of a distorted view. So thank you, Mary. Thank you, David. And thank you all of you, for watching and listening. And I hope you'll reach out to me. I'm very accessible. And thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.
John, I want to thank you very much from myself and Mercer County Library System. I've gotten very positive comments thanking you in the chat, and we will be in touch. And I want to remind everybody to keep an eye on our social media and our events page at mcl.org. So thank you very much. And yes, happy Thanksgiving to all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.